Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. Thanks for listening. I am a holistic nutritionist specializing in women's health as a biohacker and podcaster, content creator, and everything like that. Thank you for joining me on my platform and my podcast. This episode is really, really interesting. I loved going through the importance of cellular health with Jessica Kane Berman. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at Body Bio. We get into a lot of different discussions on this episode, and we go pretty in depth. And I really appreciate that because sometimes it's nice to really look at health and optimizing health from a very minute cellular level. And that's exactly what we did. And actually something we talked about in this episode that has kind of stuck with me is this idea of leaky cells. So you're going to hear us talk about it. And I recorded this like quite a while ago. And it's funny how it kind of has just like been in my brain since then, just kind of like as this concept of something that I am going back to. So leaky cells, essentially, we've heard of leaky gut where your gut lining is compromised, it's impermeable, and you have these holes and essentially they get bigger and there's more of them and your food slips through into your blood. And there is a toxicity that can come from that as well as inflammation and a bunch of other issues. So that's like the whole premise of leaky gut syndrome. I had that. That was like part of my root cause, quote unquote, of my initial health problems when I was a teenager was figuring out that, okay, I have serious gut health issues. I have leaky gut syndrome. The more medical name that people use for it is intestinal impermeability. And then gut health is obviously really big now and everyone knows about it. But then on this episode, we actually start talking about leaky cells, which is basically the same concept, but from a much more cellular level, much more smaller level. So let me kind of read to you what this is about. So it's not just your gut that might be leaky, it's your cells. When your cell membranes don't have enough nutrients and are exposed to too many toxins, they can easily begin to lose their structure and function. When cells are leaky, they don't communicate, create energy, or detoxify as well as they could, eventually leading to disease and dysfunction. You can repair leaky cells by increasing phospholipids, amino acids, and essential fatty acids, and reducing toxins and stress. So essentially, every cell has this double phospholipid bilayer that is surrounding the cell. And again, we talk about this further into this show. And essentially, it's talking about this idea of that cell becoming leaky, that barrier, that phospholipid bilayer becoming compromised and not being as strong, structured as it should be due to toxins, stress, lifestyle, poor nutrition. And then obviously, how do we repair it? Increasing phospholipids, which would obviously make up that double ring around the cell. Amino acids, proteins always really essential. And then essential fatty acids, things like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 even. And then things like fatty 15, which is the new essential fatty acid that was discovered. So things like that. So it was just a really interesting episode and I really enjoyed it. I think I found it very interesting because a lot of the time in the biohacking, functional health, optimal health world, we talk about this idea of what is the root cause for the health issues that we're seeing on the surface. So for example, like could be anything, could be eczema, could be a headache, could be unexplained weight gain, could be you can't sleep at night, all these things, right? So we have these symptoms and then we try to figure out, okay, what system is being compromised? Where is this coming from? And we go further and further down the rabbit hole. And then what I always think when I think deeply about this is I think, okay, so eventually we get to cellular health kind of everywhere, right? Like eventually we get to this idea of the cells are not functioning properly. And you could even go further and you could say, actually, hey, it might be the mitochondria in the cell that's no longer functioning properly. Sure. But it's interesting then if you take that concept of like, okay, all disease, all symptoms, signs, issues actually come from poor cellular health. Like end of story, right? Like end of story. Like that's the root cause of it. But it's like, what is actually happening with those cells that is making them function poorly? And then comes in this concept of leaky cells. Okay, so maybe the cells are not as strong. Their barrier around them is not as strong. So the toxins that we're exposed to in our life are getting in. The stress that we're exposed to, we're not eating the proper foods, all of these things. We're not building up those cells. So I don't know. It's just like a really interesting episode to go that deep and think about it like that, because then it actually provides relief, right? So if we go that deep and we say, okay, no matter what your symptom is, we're actually looking at a cellular health issue here. We're actually looking at leaky cells. Okay, so let's heal the leaky cells, which will then heal ultimately the issue that you're dealing with. And I just find that like fascinating if we can take such a root cause approach. But then part of me also thinks as well, if we take it a step further, bear with me, if we take it a step further and we say, okay, this is because our cells aren't functioning well. Why are our cells not functioning well? Like I said, okay, lifestyle, nutrition based. Okay, so really the root cause of the issues that we're dealing with are the daily decisions that we make. And it's therefore like basically our 100% not 100%, but mostly our fault / responsibility of why these symptoms and issues are popping up in the first place. And then the way that we heal, the way that we actually have a solution is actually the same thing. That's the root cause, is lifestyle and nutrition modifications. So isn't that weird? Like just to think about that 360 approach. Anyway, that's like how my brain thinks when I think about functional medicine and nutrition and lifestyle. And, obviously there's genetics. So like the genetics, you can go deeper into the cell, but then there's epigenetics, and do we turn those genes on and off? And how do we turn genes on and off? Again, it's nutrition and lifestyle. So I like this episode. It really opened my eyes to this idea of leaky cells. Something I'm going to think more about, definitely maybe do some research on, maybe grab a couple books on it, see what I can find. And I hope you do as well. A quick shout out to the DM of the week, the DM of the day. Thank you guys for all your DMs. I really do appreciate them. Seriously. My DMs are actually my favorite place. So if you ever want to message me, that's kind of where I'm hanging out. This one is, I thought I would just like talk about because it's a pretty easy one, pretty general question. So she says, "Hi, Brittany. I've been following your podcast and I love the content you share. Your insights into women's health and wellness are valuable. I'm reaching out because I've been struggling with hormonal imbalances and I'm curious about natural ways to manage them. I've heard you talk about diet, supplements, and lifestyle changes, and I would love to get your advice on where to start. Do you have any specific recommendations or resources that could help me on this journey? Thank you so much for your time and all that you do to promote healthy living." Thank you. That's really nice. So these DMs come from Instagram at biohackingbrittany. I share a lot of them. Obviously, everyone stays anonymous. So yeah, if you ever want to be featured, you can just do that. Send me a message. So yeah, healthy ways to kind of like balance your hormones. There's so much to say about this. I have a bunch of podcast episodes about this. Man, like this could be its own podcast episode. So resources though, like let's just start there. You can go to my website. I have my hormone balancing guide, my cycle syncing guide that I recommend to every single woman. It's called Ebb and Flow. It's a download. You can get that right now. I really, really recommend that. And that is a great place to start. I would argue that it's really great because it's got a bunch of recipes in it, first of all, over 30 different recipes that can help balance your hormones, but it also explains a lot of it. So it explains the menstrual cycle, the different phases, how we feel during those different phases, the biohacks you can do to support each phase, supplements, nutrition, lifestyle modifications, exercise, everything you can do during those different phases of your menstrual cycle to optimize it. It's really great. And it's really great to just kind of explain all of that. So that is a great resource. It's on my website. I think it's like 20% off right now. I'm pretty sure it is. So go check that out. Again, it's digital, so you can just get it on your phone or anywhere. That's a good place to start. I would also listen to any of my podcast episodes about hormonal imbalances. I have a bunch. You can search on my website for them. Those will come up. Then I would kind of start looking into some books if we're talking resources. So, man, I'd have to go through all the ones that I read for creating my guide. I think, let me pull it up. Let me see what I used. Okay, so here are some books that I think are worth it and kind of worth exploring. So first up, we have Woman Code by Elisa Vitti. I have this one. It's interesting. It's a lot about PCOS, but also about balancing your hormones. So that one would be great. And I will link these on Amazon in the show notes so that you can have all of them right away, just to make it easy for you. That one was really good. The Hormone Cure by Sarah Gottfried is really good. It's an in-depth look at hormones and hormonal health. She's a doctor, so that one is really great as well. She's a gynecologist. The other one I liked, I'm trying to find it. Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton is really good. Dr. Jolene Brighton in general has a lot of resources about hormone balancing. You could check her out. She talks about like side effects of birth control and things like that, and cycle syncing as well. And you can kind of go deeper with her there. And I think that would be a great place for you to kind of look as well. So I'll link those books in the show notes for you. I would do my guide, podcast episodes, and those books. That's pretty hefty. Like that's a good place to start. And I think you are going to make waves there. If you are obviously looking at fertility and preconception health, different story. I would definitely sign up for my Baby Steps course. I think it's really great and all about balancing hormones. It's all about holistically living and supporting your health in a way that's very natural and I don't want to say calm, but like gentle so that you can optimize your menstrual cycle so that you can get pregnant. So essentially what you're doing in my Baby Steps 90-day protocol is balancing your hormones and increasing them, decreasing the, things like testosterone, cortisol, maybe you're estrogen dominant, things like that. So that is a really phenomenal resource. That has so much, my course has so much research in it. It took so long. So it's got a lot in there for you. That's all I'm going to say for that for resources. I don't want to go into like what I would do because it would be this whole podcast episode and that is not fair. So if you have further questions or more specific questions, send me a message because then I can really get into it. If it's like asking about a certain supplement or like an exercise routine, if you have PCOS, things like that. Like if it's more specific, I can kind of guide you a bit better. But I think everything I gave you is a great place to start. And a shout out to Nuchido. Oh my gosh, Nuchido. I love Nuchido. This is, first of all, it is a woman-founded, woman-run business in the biohacking space, which we love and support. Okay. They have a supplement that is all about boosting and increasing NAD plus levels. This is so important. And instead of, using a supplement that just has these precursors to NAD plus in them, they look at the root cause of what declines NAD plus and then provides everything you need in order to alleviate that decrease. So NAD plus is all about helping our cells function better and cellular energy. And it decreases as we age. It decreases with stress and alcohol, things like that. And so their formulation has vitamins, minerals, and patented herbs in it to really support those NAD levels as they decrease as we get older. Fabulous company. Love them. I will always support them. I just love to support women in this space in general. It's very male dominated. So if you are looking to boost your NAD levels, I would definitely take Nuchido. That's spelled Nuchido. And I will link that in the show notes for you. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany to get 10% off. And a shout out to Bioptimizers. They are giving away free magnesium all summer long. Isn't that crazy? So if you've heard me talk about Bioptimizers and you're like, man, this girl loves her magnesium. Yes, I do. And you can love it too, because now you can get a bottle for free. So only in July and August, they are doing this free bottle promotion exclusively for my audience. It's linked in the show notes. There's like a special link for it that will activate the offer. I don't think you can find it online anywhere else. So you actually have to use my link. Magnesium is involved in over 300 different processes in the body. And most of us are actually deficient in it. Yeah, sucks. Due to our soil, due to our poor nutrition, and stress and toxins and these other things. So all that to say, get your magnesium, get your NAD plus booster. Okay. Let's have a healthy girl, biohacker girl summer. I want to see it, and enjoy this podcast episode as we dive deep into cellular health with Body Bio. I really enjoyed my discussion with Jessica, and I appreciate her coming on, and I will catch you soon for another episode. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am thrilled that you are listening today. Thank you for joining us. I have the very special Jessica Kane Berman on the show with me. She is the CMO of Body Bio, which is a supplement company, and she has been spearheading their marketing campaigns, forging key partnerships with leading medical professionals, and has really made a big space in the supplement space, has made her mark in the supplement space, which is actually really difficult to do because there are so many supplement companies out there now. So she is at the forefront of bringing cutting edge health and wellness solutions to the masses. And today we are going to dive into her personal health journey, the importance of supplements during preconception, fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. We're also going to talk about gut health and postbiotics. And so, Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I would love for you to start us off with your personal health journey. What has that kind of looked like over, the last few years, I guess, for you?
Yeah, my health struggles really started when I was like 18 years old. My childhood, we ate clean. We did not have a lot of sugar in our home. We often went picking our fruits and vegetables. We often got amazing produce and things from the Amish because we were based in New Jersey. So we had them kind of delivering stuff from Pennsylvania, which was amazing because it doesn't get more regenerative than that. And overall, I was smooth sailing until I was about 18. At 18, I lost my father, and that trauma really set in health problems. And that the root of it was in my gut. And so I had a myriad of different gut issues. And this is what brought me into my first kind of foray into health, wellness, biohacking, and supplementation. And it wasn't until I had seen countless gastroenterologists, done so many endoscopies, colonoscopies, I was left with an IBS diagnosis. I felt like I could never digest my foods properly. I was given, Prilosec and Nexium, these drugs for decreasing the amount of acid in your stomach. And the reality was when I sat down with my grandfather and went over this, he laughed because he said, "You're exactly like me. And I need to take betaine HCl. I need more stomach acid in order to digest my foods. You're struggling with H. pylori. This is how to deal with it." And so it was really his approach because he had started Body Bio in 1998. And he started it out of a need for specific supplements to deal with our cells, right? So they really looked at cellular health and how do we address cellular health? The reason he started Body Bio was because in the 1980s, he was a serial entrepreneur and he had chronic fatigue. So he had his own health struggles and he helped me along the path of this is the way to fix these stomach problems that you have. And I was so grateful in my early 20s to have the access to him and to be able to take a look at things from a more functional lens as opposed to the allopathic community.
Yeah, no kidding. To have such a resource at your hands, especially at that point in time, obviously, now, but gut health is so trendy now. And, you can hop onto any social media platform and research gut health supplements or what to take or what to eat. But it wasn't like that back then. And when I was a teenager, I also had gut health issues. And I also realized through, working with a naturopath and testing that it was my gut that was malfunctioning, but it took me a long time. Thankfully, a lot of people don't have to kind of go through that anymore. So, after these conversations with your grandfather, what did you start to do? You started to incorporate these supplements. Was there anything else that you think really moved the needle for you?
So in my early 20s, it was really simple. It was let's figure out how I can digest food better, right? It was let's get my upper stomach, my upper GI system working for me better. And I was in my early 20s. I was traveling all over. I was working. My husband and I moved to England. So it was really simple. It was, let's take HCl when I eat a meal. Let's take some magnesium to kind of balance it out. Let's have some gallbladder support. Use butyrate as a postbiotic. So get the digestive system just kind of functioning better, regulating my blood sugar a little bit more. But I didn't really take it uber seriously other than what I was taking at my meals. I wasn't going any deeper than that until I was about 30 years old. And so you've got, fast forward 10 years, we are now married. We want to start having children. The thing to do in England is if you can afford it, you go see a fertility specialist to see, because everything's on the NHS. If I wanted to see a private practitioner to look at, okay, what am I going to be coming up against? I don't know why I went. I think it was just like the thing to do amongst my friends. And so I go to this doctor and he looks at my blood work and he did an examination, everything, and said, you have polycystic ovaries. And here's a prescription for metformin. Here's a prescription for Clomid. I'll see you in 3 months, but you're going to have diabetes in 5 to 10 years. And I was like, what? Like, stop. And so, of course, the second I walk out, other than calling my husband, I called my grandfather and said, what do I do? And he was like, oh, this is easy. And it's so funny because now I feel like you see PCOS everywhere. And we have this generation of women who have been on birth control, as I was, for several years on and off. Whether I went on, I probably went on it because of acne. And now we know so much more about the role that hormone regulation and gut health and all of these things play in our body. And I had some very simple steps and just some lifestyle adjustments to take care of my insulin resistance, my metabolism. And that was the point in time that really shifted my health goals for me and made me see things completely differently. I would say that that's probably the point in time that I became a biohacker and just really wanted to get to the bottom of all the things I was experiencing, because I am a very intuitive person when it comes to my health. And so I want to know how I can tweak things to feel my best.
Are you feeling drained, struggling with low energy, or noticing that your body just isn't bouncing back like it used to? The culprit might be declining NAD+ levels in your cells. NAD+ is a vital molecule found in every cell of your body. It converts nutrients into energy and activates essential cellular processes. But as we age, our NAD+ levels naturally decline, leading to reduced energy, slower recovery, and overall poor cellular health. Stresses like intense workouts, disrupted sleep, and alcohol can make this decline even worse. But thankfully, there is good news. I love to use Nuchido Time Plus. This is a breakthrough NAD supplement designed to combat these issues. I actually get asked all the time what NAD supplement I use, and this is the one. It is backed by a patented formulation and clinically proven in a double-blinded studies. Nuchido Time Plus targets the root causes of NAD+ decline. It uses advanced science to boost your NAD+ levels, supporting better energy, faster recovery, and enhancing overall health. I have an exclusive offer just for my listeners, and you can use code BiohackingBrittany at checkout to get 10% off of your order. Don't let declining NAD levels hold you back any longer. Elevate your health and unlock your full potential with Nuchido Time Plus. Remember, that's code BiohackingBrittany for 10% off your order. Take charge of your cellular health today. Yeah, I love that. I have a similar kind of story where I had a doctor thought that I had PCOS as well. And it was heartbreaking at the time. And I was not anywhere near ready for kids. And it put me on this journey of okay, how do I balance my hormones? Everything you're saying, how do I balance my hormones so that in a few years, when I'm ready to start trying, I'm actually going to be successful? But honestly, even as somebody who knows a lot about health and a biohacker, it was really heartbreaking to have that conversation because I think a lot of women feel like this, you feel like you are supposed to be able to have a baby. Naturally, that's what the woman's body is for. And then when someone says, oh, you actually might not be able to,
right?
My world came crashing down, but it made me better. But it was very emotionally hard to go through.
Agreed. And I remember I happened to have been with my best friend. She had come in from New York for work, and we went out to dinner that night, and I was hysterical. And I just thought, this can't be what's happening. And I spent time talking to my grandfather, talking to a couple functional OBGYNs that I had in my life, a naturopath as well, really put together a plan of action. And then I felt really confident. I have to say, I was pregnant within 3 months of that meeting. I got very fortunate. I did have one miscarriage before that meeting. That was probably what kind of caused me to go to that doctor. But as we now know, I mean, miscarriages are so common, but you start to panic. And when these girls are finding out in their early 20s that they have polycystic ovaries and they're kind of left struggling with what to do, it's really frustrating. And I mean, I have so many people in my life that I'm helping to kind of take a more functional approach to, let's get to the root cause. Let's address the root cause. Let's address your diet. Let's address the metabolic changes that need to happen in your body so that you can have healthy fertility outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely relate to that. So, you mentioned nutrition and lifestyle changes that you made after that diagnosis. I'd love to know some of those. We don't have to go into them too in depth, but just for all the PCOS girlies listening to this show who are like, okay, tell me what you did. I would love to know.
So first and foremost, I started taking sodium butyrate, 2 caps after every meal. It helps with blood sugar regulation. It's a GLP-1 agonist, natural GLP-1 agonist in the gut. So it boosts your GLP-1. It helps to regulate blood sugar. It helps to seal leaky gut. And so all of the GI functions in the gut start to work better. It's also very anti-inflammatory in the gut. So I started with butyrate. I started really incorporating more healthy fats into my life. So I started with seed cycling and eating raw seeds. I started incorporating phosphatidylcholine, which is a product that my grandfather first started manufacturing in 1999. And that's a healthy fat supplement that feeds the cells in our body. What it does when our cells are healthy is all of our organs function better. So you're detoxifying more properly. You're detoxifying the hormones that you're producing more properly. And when your liver is functioning at its best, you're going to have a healthy regulation and a healthy balance of hormones, not these spikes that are getting caused from metabolic resistance. So I really looked at it from, okay, my PCOS is a result of not necessarily a poor diet, but not a balanced diet, and from probably eating too many carbohydrates. And I need to look at this, add in more protein, add in more fat. I also did I took inositol, which I think is very common. I only took that for a short period of time. And I did some lifestyle changes. So for me, that was the first time that I really started looking at what is alcohol in my life and is it serving me? I get horrendous hangovers. Even if I have one glass of wine, my histamine bucket was probably way too overloaded. And I would get these horrible headaches and kind of flushed cheeks, which I now know is histamine and mast cell activation issues. And why am I doing it? So I cut out alcohol. Because I wanted to get pregnant, right? I wasn't in my early 20s still partying around the world and enjoying life. I was really ready to have a family. And so I cut out alcohol and I started eating breakfast before I drank my coffee in the morning. And those simple things, along with the right supplementation, there were some things that everyone can do. And there are some things that might be more bio-individualized. I also use something called maca, Feminescence Maca Harmony. I know maca root can be kind of excitatory for some, but it worked really well for me. And honestly, I was pregnant within 3 months. I then changed my supplement routine specifically for pregnancy. I then got pregnant when my son was 10 months old with our daughter. And I did not intend to have them that quickly, but my period came back very quickly after I had my son. And I had great success breastfeeding. I thought breastfeeding would have protected me a little more, but I didn't know. And I then 2 years later successfully conceived our youngest boy.
That's awesome. I mean, good for you. And I just love having people like you on the show because it really gives hope to all the women listening out there who are, navigating this maybe at the start of that journey of fertility. Maybe they just got diagnosed with PCOS or endometriosis or these other health conditions that can make fertility and the preconception period difficult and mentally difficult, physically difficult. But it's like you said, like there's small tweaks that we can do to our lifestyle that if you do them day in and day out, actually make a very big difference in women's health. Like even getting adequate sleep is a huge one. Stress management, exercise, these things. And it's hard, I talk about this quite a bit, but it's not very sexy, right? Like it's kind of boring to like make these recommendations to people, but the boring stuff actually really does move the needle the most, I find.
Yeah, and find yourself a partner that finds those things sexy, right? I mean, it's about like that life together and feeling really good. And even now, I mean, we have 3 kids under the age of, when they were all born, it was 3 kids under the age of 4. And so I don't drink now because I have to function at such a high level between work and the kids and being present for the kids and really wanting to be there, that's something that I've maintained. But also just the more you start learning, I think the deeper you get into biohacking, the more you learn, the more excited you are to live really healthily. I think that in today's world, we don't realize that like our bodies have not evolved to take on the toxins and the toxic load that is now current in our world. And so whereas 20, 30 years ago, women may not have had such bad hormonal dysregulation. They've introduced various different toxins and chemicals. I mean, I think there's been something like 90,000 chemicals introduced in the last 100 years. These things affect our health, and birth control affects our health. And so we need to consider these when we are getting into our 20s and 30s, thinking about fertility. But also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I feel like so many people feel okay in their 20s and all of a sudden they turn 30 and things just are like autoimmune diseases start popping up and GI issues start popping up. And so I think the more we start to recognize like, okay, the world around us is very different. We can empower ourselves to make different choices and different changes to make our health better and have better outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is, like with these conditions, like the autoimmune conditions or something like PCOS, it doesn't just pop up overnight. It's actually something that's been developing in the body for years. Same with cancer, right? Like it's been developing slowly over a long time. It's just that it might not have presented itself. You might not have had such strong symptoms. Maybe you were on something like birth control that was kind of suppressing it and you weren't able to see the symptoms. But there is definitely a rise in PCOS specifically. Like even in the last year, I would say the amount of people I see talking about it online. And I know you like said birth control and the toxins in our environment. And I agree that those are definitely triggers that are contributing to it. But is there anything else on your radar that you think, hey, this actually might be why we're seeing such a sharp increase suddenly?
So I'll tell you, and I'm pretty fortunate because my grandparents started Body Bio in 1998, and they were part of a very small group of people, functional medicine practitioners and doctors, researchers that were doing awesome things back then. It was a small group kind of in the Pacific Northwest. And a lot of these different massive companies you know of today grew from that little kind of pool of people. They were very collaborative. And so my grandparents used to lecture and do these great conferences just for doctors, functional doctors. And then the doctors would go off and work with their patients. But one of the things that my doctor, who has been a Body Bio doctor for probably 20, 25 years now, really has come to find, and I would say she's one of the most incredible precision medicine doctors in the world. She explains it like this. Toxins should sit in our extracellular matrix. And the problem in today's world, and the reason we're seeing all of these things kind of skyrocket, including, various different cancers and autoimmune diseases, is because toxins our extracellular matrix is so overwhelmed with these toxins that the toxins are breaking down the wall of our cells and getting into our cells. And it's there that they affect our mitochondria, our DNA, epigenetics, and they really particularly affect our phospholipid cell membrane. So there's this wall that's made of phospholipids that protects our cell membrane. And if you think of, we often say leaky gut, it's the same scenario with a cell, and it's leaky cell. So these toxins are creating holes in our cells, and the toxins are getting into our cells. And it's happening more now than it's ever happened, which is why we're seeing all these things skyrocket. And so one thing I really like to educate on is the doctors that are looking at things from the cellular level, that are looking at cellular health and cell membrane medicine, really understand that there are ways that you can strengthen the cell to protect against invading toxins. And that's really the most root you can possibly get in the body as to why things are kind of going awry.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had leaky gut when I was a teenager, so I'm very familiar with that. And it makes sense as well when you explain it like that, when you think about how you were saying how you were removing alcohol and removing this like extra source of toxins. And, you know, a lot of people are really into like clean beauty and clean living and clean products now. And that helps these conditions because you're removing the extra toxins that are being added to your body, like your toxin load, right? So some people see that, you know, like my in-laws, for example, they don't listen to this show, so it's fine. But my in-laws, like, you know, I will choose the products that are non-toxic at the store, right? And they think it's silly, that's usually more expensive and all of these things. But in my brain, I'm like, why on earth would I use something that has 20 different chemicals in it that I can't pronounce? That's just adding to my load that I then need to detoxify and have in my home. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So that's kind of, I love that you really explained that root cause of like, that's why those little decisions are actually so important.
They're so critical. And when people say things like, well, you know, in my grandparents' generation, it didn't affect them. Well, our grandparents, physicians were also smoking cigarettes in their offices while they were delivering babies. Like, they didn't know so much then that they know now. And the more that we dig into the research, the more we can see the practical application of these things, the more we realize that it's not normal for 20-something-year-olds to be having colon cancer and for those rates to be increasing. It's not normal for so many people around us to be diagnosed with MS. And it's just the amount of processed, the amount of toxins are just shocking. And so I often let those people just kind of, it's like, okay, if that's your choice to stick your head in the mud, that's completely up to you and you are completely entitled to do that. But I think for me, it caused health problems for me. And I just wanted to live healthier and feel good. And I'm really happy that I kind of opened my eyes in my early 30s and started to see some of these things.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, to do that so early and so young is fantastic compared to, you know, making these changes once you have another diagnosis or something more serious. The other thing too is like with this concept of leaky cell and, you know, the toxins slipping through this phospholipid bilayer is, I would imagine that it appears different for different people. So like, because it's such a deep cellular root cause, it's not like person A and person B are going to present with the same symptoms. So like, with that being said, you could have somebody that is maybe has like eczema and headaches and fatigue, or you could have a girl who has PCOS, but maybe the root cause is that same issue of like, we really need to just strengthen the cells and work on our cells for both of these people.
It's a foundation, right? It's part of the toolkit. And when functional, precision, integrative doctors look at someone's health, they look at it in a completely bio-individualized way. And so if you start layering on different treatments and you start, let's say you are dealing with somebody who's dealing with hormone regulation, and you just start giving them DIM supplements or inositol on its own, if you don't actually get into like the root and get down into the cellular level, those things are going to be very surface level and you may not have as much success. And so I often like to tell people, whether it's a child with autism, whether it's somebody who's dealing with aging and neurodegeneration, if you skip out on that key central part of really looking at the cellular health, looking at the fats that we're putting into our body and addressing our lipids in our body, you're going to miss out on a huge part of the longevity puzzle, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're spot on. So what would you recommend to those people who are like, okay, I want to strengthen my cell membrane, these phospholipids, I want to seal it up. What should I do?
Sure. So this is where the research that my grandparents did brought them to. And they started doing research on essential fatty acids and phospholipids. And The phospholipid product that my grandfather developed isolates there's 5 main phospholipids in our cell membrane. And our product, BodyBio PC, isolates those 5 phospholipids in a liposomal form. So that means when you digest it, it's going to make it through the digestive tract into the cellular bloodstream for cellular delivery. So it's actually going to get to the cells where it's meant to get. And that's the whole point of a liposomal product as well. The other product is called BodyBio Balance Oil. And at first glance, you might look at the ingredients on there and go, oh, this is seed oils. But it's actually not. Seed oils are oxidized and rancid. They're often heat treated or solvent extracted. So the use of chemicals to extract those seed oils. And they're a byproduct of soybean or sunflower, safflower production. Our product is like cold pressing seeds that are organic. We treat it super carefully. So you're getting these super bioactive lipids that feed our body those healthy fats and oils that our cells need in the right ratio. So it's linoleic and alpha linolenic acid, and those are in the right ratio that our cells really need.
If there's one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral. It's powerful, and it's involved in over 600 critical reactions, including hormone balance, stress management, sleep quality. Even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. But there are 2 big problems here. 1, magnesium has been largely missing from U.S. soil since the 1950s, which explains why it's estimated that up to 75% of the population may be deficient. And 2, most supplements contain only 1 or 2 forms of magnesium, when in reality, your body needs 7. The only magnesium supplement on the market that has the full spectrum of all 7 forms is called Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This is my favorite. I've been taking it for over 2 years. That's why I'm so excited to tell you that I was able to arrange a killer deal for you for this summer. You won't find this deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. This deal is exclusively for my audience, and it's for a very, very limited time and only while supplies last. So right now you can actually get a bottle of Magnesium Breakthrough for free. Like actually, you get it for free. I'm not kidding. So go now to my website that they made for me, which is magbreakthrough.com/biohackingbrittanyfree, and get your bottle of Magnesium Breakthrough for free today. Again, that's magbreakthrough.com/biohackingbrittanyfree. And you get it for free. So go now. It's linked in my show notes of this episode, and it's linked on my website so you can find it really easily, or just DM me and I will send it to you as well. All of us should be on magnesium, and this is my absolute favorite one to take. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine this type of product, like the PC product, is really helpful, obviously during fertility with, obviously balancing hormones, ovulating, once a month, that type of thing. But also during pregnancy when you are developing a baby and the cells are multiplying.
Of course. I mean, it's so critical. 2 things. We're really looking at preconception. We're partnering with some doctors' offices to start running some clinical data and eventually clinical trials on preconception and cellular health. And so we're using a myriad of different products to really address like a cellular detoxification before people get pregnant. So how do we clear out some of these toxins from our cells before we get pregnant? And you do that using phospholipids, so PC, balance oil, glutathione, vitamin C, and sodium butyrate. And so we've got people working with a couple different doctors' offices on this protocol. And I'm really excited to see where that takes us, because the healthier the mother is, the healthier the mother's mitochondria is, that's directly passed down onto the baby. And so the intention is hopefully we will see better fetal outcomes and less rates of neurodegenerative issues in children, which is really exciting. So that's part 1 for preconception. But for pregnancy, we are building these babies out of cells and they're stealing our phospholipids. And so you think of baby brain, postpartum depletion. So much of this is because our babies are literally pulling every fat and lipid they can to nourish themselves so that they can grow and have a healthy outcome. And it's a really beautiful process, but it's one that we don't often hear enough. We talk so much about prenatals. We talk about choline needs, but we don't actually specifically talk about phosphatidylcholine. And choline will not supply PC. You have to be taking a true liposomal PC for it to supply phosphatidylcholine.
Okay, this is so interesting. So I definitely will research this more after this episode. I have a course and a program out that's called Baby Steps, and it's all about preconception and educating people on how do you get healthy before you start to try to conceive. And part of it is a 90-day protocol for the man and the woman. And it's everything we're talking about, like detoxing, these supplements, no alcohol, no drugs, and I explain all of it in this course, like why it's so important for sperm health, why it's so important for egg quality and all of these things. And when I did that, my husband and I did that. We did it for 90 days. I felt phenomenal afterwards. My goodness. And then we got pregnant on the very first try.
Amazing.
So it was really very reassuring. And I'm so happy to hear that you're also doing research in the preconception space, because the narrative around fertility and preconception is go and try. And then if you have issues, okay, come and see a fertility doctor. It is never be proactive, be preventative. Let's get you as healthy as you can be to make the healthiest baby. That's not the discussion. The discussion is, let's fix it if there's a problem, not let's work on our mitochondria.
Band-aid.
Yeah.
That's what they do. It's a Band-aid, right? It's not actually fixing the root problem. And so then you have children with more and more issues. And that's not to say that, people who have fertility struggles are not going to have healthy babies at all. It's just that there are things that we can do and little levers that we can tweak to make our mitochondrial health better that gets passed on to the baby, to ensure that we're getting the right fats and lipids in our body that get directly passed on to the baby, those minerals that are so important for the development of the baby. In the third trimester, I really like to also add in a lot more fish. And we just came out with a fish oil that's a cold pressed caviar that has naturally occurring SPMs in it, which are really, really great for the baby's health, and DHA for the baby's health in the third trimester. And there's so many different things you can do. And there's so many things you can do even to support breastfeeding and hormonal regulation in the postpartum period as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I definitely want to try a couple of those. I definitely want to talk about postpartum depletion, because, postpartum depression is something that everyone kind of is talking about, and which is great. I'm glad it's not a taboo topic anymore. But I started to hear about postpartum depletion on other podcasts. And I think this happens to every woman, right?
I do too.
Yeah, your nutrient stores are depleted after birth. How is it possible for that not to happen would be my question.
I'll tell you, the difference in my postpartum period from my first to my third were drastic, really drastic. I had postpartum anxiety. After my first, I was in this state of just trying to figure out how to keep this child alive. It was very colicky and gassy, and he was up all the time and crying. And it was a first time mom. I had no idea what I was doing. And I just wanted to have my village around me. And I lived in Philadelphia. I had no family in town. It was tough. My husband went back to work really quickly because we're growing a business, and he was working with my grandfather, and he was quite old school. It was okay, you're out a week, you're back at the office. And I struggled. I really struggled. And I didn't know a lot of the things that I know now. And on my third, I really gave myself grace and time to just stay in bed with my baby. I made sure that I had my mom, my mother-in-law, different people in my life constantly there to help me with the other kids. My husband took a lot more time off to be with our other children so that I could really be with the baby. I focused a lot on nourishing my body with minerals, with a lot of fats, a lot of phospholipids and essential fatty acids, electrolytes. Postpartum, I took some great kind of balancing herbs after my second two pregnancies that I loved by a company called, there are two companies. One is, I think it's called Wishbone. Wishbone has great herbs, and then Earthly. They have these postpartum tinctures that are wonderful. And that really helped me to detoxify those hormones, because you're going through so many hormonal changes, but then you're also dealing with that nutrient depletion. And so ensuring that I had the food around me made, right? My mom was constantly in the kitchen making stews and different meals to ensure that I was getting enough nutrients in, was a drastic difference. So I think the focus on very simple things like making sure you're getting the right nourishing foods. I love the Weston Price Foundation. So I would always have like just soft boiled eggs around, constantly eating things like eggs. I was taking a mineral called Pure Encapsulations Mineral 650. I was using our electrolyte called Body Bio Elite. Obviously, our Body Bio products such as PC and balance oil to get those nourishing fats in, and drinking a ton of filtered water, but really just spending more time on my own with the baby, breastfeeding, chilling out, not trying to do too much. And it was such a lovely, I mean, I look back on it and I'm so happy that that was my third baby and my last baby. And that was the postpartum experience that I had.
I love that. That's really encouraging. How much time did you kind of spend in that like downtime? Yeah.
I would say a good month to 6 weeks. And then like slowly started to just really slow down. As you can imagine, my husband and I work together and we're building this business together. I am very, very busy. So I would just try to kind of work from my phone if I had to. I didn't have like my computer sitting next to me all the time. For those 6 weeks, I really wanted to focus on the baby. And then after that, I started easing back into work. And, you know, I understand that I'm extremely privileged to be able to do that. And I am so grateful that that was my experience. But when I did, because we have a fast growing company, I had to get back to work. And so I tried to do as much as I could to really support breast milk production, pumping, all of these things. But I think it really changed in the long run. I was much healthier mentally, healthier physically, because I allowed myself that kind of support, allowed all that help in. I often tell new moms, like, don't try and do it on your own. It does take a village. And I think that having community there is really, really awesome and important.
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually just moved we moved across Canada, and I moved closer to my family and my husband's family because of that very reason of like, I run my own business. I don't get to take a year off of paid maternity leave. It's not reality for me. And I wouldn't want to anyway. Like very similar to you, like I love the challenges of running a business. I love my work. So I was like, okay, like we need people around us. And it's a very hard decision to make because you want to stay, like we were living in Vancouver. I want to stay close to my friends. At the end of the day, my friends aren't going to come over and make me food and support me like that. Right. So to those listening who are kind of in that zone, maybe early pregnancy, fertility zone, like I really encourage you to think about how can you create that village around you and think about it from the perspective of your health, your mental health and your physical health. Like it could allow you to have this cocoon time with your baby that you might not get otherwise.
Yeah. And, you know, we get that maternal, as all those maternal instincts kick in. And I think lean into those as well. I think that that's something, don't try and fight them. I think during my first pregnancy, my first postpartum period, I tried to fight it. I was still very like type A, got to get all this stuff done. And I've realized the more you can just let go of those things for that period, especially, the better.
Yeah, I love that. For the women listening, and I like include myself in this kind of, who are the type A and who are maybe moms as well and have a million things on the go, what kind of nutrients do you think are like the most pivotal, would you say? Because, you know, there's obviously postpartum depletion, but there's also like burnout depletion that just kind of happens over the years when moms are just kind of doing all of the things all of the time.
Yeah, I've struggled with that. It's hard. And I think that, you know, making sure you're taking care of the way your body reacts to stressors is so critical and important. You know, especially as your kid will get older, taking a deep breath before you react to anything definitely helps the entire household.
Nice.
But I think that there's a couple key things that I always make sure I do. I will start my day. I drink mold-free, you know, organic, clean coffee with raw milk. I make sure that I have, first thing in the morning, I like to eat some raw cottage cheese to get in just some fat before I am consuming anything else. And then I make sure, because oftentimes in my life, I'll find I make breakfast for the kids and for my husband, but I never have time to eat for myself. And so I will always kind of take that time to make sure that I eat, because burnout is also a nutrient depletion, right? We're getting into that state. And so you have to make sure that you're taking that time for yourself to eat. I then make myself a smoothie to go. So I'll have a protein shake that I put my PC and balance oil and electrolytes into. That way I make sure I'm getting them for the day. And that kind of holds me over until lunchtime between eating breakfast, having something first thing in the morning, and then making sure I have my smoothie. The other thing that consistently really helps me is a product that we make called Body Biocalm. It has one adaptogen and it's rhodiola, but it has phosphatidylserine, manganese, glycine, and taurine. And I think people are extremely deficient in glycine. I add it in my coffee every morning, but I take Body Biocalm anytime I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed, like I have a ton of stuff to do. I take it before bed just to kind of clear my head and ensure that I get a great night rest. But I use it pretty consistently, almost 3 times a day. I took it before this podcast just to make sure I'm like thinking straight and I have my head clear, and it works really, really well. It's non-habit forming, and it's a great formula that just helps to balance the way our body reacts to stressors to kind of keep us out of that fight or flight state. And I find that that really helps a lot.
Yeah, that's really smart. And I'm glad that you do that. And I'm glad you kind of like ran through a bit of your daily routine with us, because obviously supplements are very much needed in today's world, but our nutrition and our food also is very pivotal as well. I don't know if your recommendations are any different, but for men out there who are going through burnout or maybe have high stress, like would it be the same kind of protocol?
Totally. I make my husband take Calm. He's on a very similar vitamin regimen, taking care of his gut health, taking postbiotics. We don't necessarily take probiotics unless there's a need. So unless we've recently had to take an antibiotic or somebody in the house is taking antibiotics, something like that, we don't take probiotics because it's so strain specific now. And so we make sure that we're getting a lot of the prebiotic fibers in our diet. And then we take postbiotic butyrate to really help seal leaky gut and just help with metabolic health and all the different benefits that it has. So for him, it's a lot of those kind of gut functions. He had allergies a lot as a kid. And so a lot of that stems from the gut health and continuing to just get in those healthy, nourishing fats. I send him off to work with a protein smoothie. Everybody needs more protein. And it really helps to kind of just make sure you're getting in the foods during busy days.
Nice. I love that. You mentioned postbiotics a couple of times, and I would love for you to just dive into this. I don't hear people talk about postbiotics very often. Obviously, probiotics are talked about a lot and prebiotics even now. But what are postbiotics and why are they important?
Yeah, postbiotics are fascinating. It's kind of the new frontier in gut health. And postbiotics are literally the byproduct of a healthy microbiome. So when your good bacteria, when the specific keystone strains of bacteria in your gut are getting fed the right prebiotic starches, such as resistant starch, cooled mashed potatoes, bananas, plantains, cooled and cooked rice, weird foods that not many of us eat very often. But when they get these resistant starches, they ferment them into something called butyrate, and it's a byproduct of these specific bacteria. Butyrate is across the board, everybody's low in butyrate right now, and it's really because of the overuse of antibiotics. It's because of the pesticides and herbicides like glyphosate that are gut disruptive, and they are kind of affecting the bacteria in our gut, and so our bacteria are producing less butyrate. Butyrate is really incredible because it's really responsible for how our immune system works. We know that the immune system stems from the gut, but it's butyrate that kind of tells the immune system how to act. And so if you have too low, you're going to see various different issues in autoimmune diseases. But it also plays a really important role in leaky gut and sealing the tight junctions in between the leaky gut that occurs.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's so interesting to think about it like that. And just to understand the microbiome and leaky gut and how we're absorbing our food in such a different way. I think it's so cool. That is the new, gut frontier that we're digging deep into. I'm curious if you give your kids any of these, or are they a bit too young right now, or like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. So my kids get PC and balance oil daily. If they ever have to take an antibiotic, I definitely give them butyrate. I actually give them a different company's butyrate, not the one we manufacture because it's a liquid version. I give them Pure Encapsulations liquid butyrate. and they don't love it because it smells. Butyrate has a natural stench to it. So it can be difficult for the kids to take, but it's so good for them that if you can bribe them or do whatever you can to get them to take it, it's beneficial. My kids sometimes will take Megaspore probiotics, but I always make sure like they drink my water. So if I'm walking around with a thing of water, I always have electrolytes in it. So they're getting some of that. And overall, I think kids have a real great ability to detoxify. We struggled. We had some mold in our house this year. We were very fortunate that nobody had any symptoms, but I just make sure to give my kids extra PC just to make sure they're clearing those toxins. PC has this really cool way of going in and almost liquefying toxins at the cellular level and pulling them out of the body. So it takes these fat soluble toxins and actually even microplastics and removes them from the body. And so PC is something I will always give my kids.
That's so interesting that it does that. Yeah. Because then, like, wouldn't it be recommended to not take it during pregnancy because, like, you're freeing up the toxins and then the baby could potentially absorb them?
Yeah, funnily enough, it doesn't work that way. Like I wouldn't recommend glutathione in pregnancy, but it works in a very different way and it's very nourishing. It's essential. It's an essential nutrient. It's a biological substrate that's always made in our body. We're synthesizing it from foods so it just kind of allows the body's natural processes to work better. And during pregnancy, our body does everything it can to protect the baby. And so those added phospholipids will be used and utilized in a different way for the baby and to grow the baby.
Cool. I love that. Yeah. Cause I'm going to get my hands on some because I am so curious to try it. And that's so encouraging that you give your kids that too. Like your kids are going to grow up to be so healthy.
I just want to make sure that they have every like bit of resilience against the world that we live in. I'm not like a doomsday person. This is not about like fear. It's just the reality of the world we live in. And so if there are things that we can do to empower ourselves to live healthier lives, then great. If there are things that I can do to make sure that my babies are, able to have their liver functioning, able to grab onto things like heavy metals and have them excreted from the body in a healthy way, as opposed to like a binder that also binds to the good, then I think that's such an added benefit.
Yeah, it's very smart. Do you have a detoxifying like lifestyle practice that you love, saunas or enemas or any of that type of thing?
I have not consistently. I kind of went through this period where my husband, like he responds really well to sauna. I went through a period where I did not. And I think it was because of the mold. And now I'm getting back into it. And so I love grounding. I think that grounding for us is really important. Viewing sunlight first thing in the morning, I think is critically important to just that release of melatonin in the body and to sleep hormones. I started using the sauna more. When I go in the sauna, I'm using liposomal glutathione and TUDCA just to speed up that detoxification. I love red light at night. What other little biohacks that I do? Just things like that and things that I can do with the kids. So we live right down the street from the beach. No one's wearing their flip-flops on the beach. Like you get on that beach and you're barefoot and, it's the best form of grounding without telling them that that's what they're doing. So little things like that I incorporate into their lives.
Oh, that's incredible. That sounds great. Just so lucky you live down the beach. And I'm glad that you recognize the health benefits that come with that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If I'm ever feeling overwhelmed at work, I literally walk 2 blocks, stick my feet in the sand, get some sun, and it changes the way you perform for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it really does. And honestly, it's like that for anything. Like even if you go stand on the grass, it can help. An ocean is a lot prettier to look at a lot of the time. And yeah, there's like the negative ions and stuff like that too. But
of course,
that's awesome. And I'm so happy that you are really like just being such a nice, like healthy role model for your kids like that. Growing little biohackers is really cool. So
yeah, it's wonderful to get to explain to them, what these foods are doing in our body, how nourishing our bodies works, how, eating a bowl full of spaghetti 3 times a day is not going to really nourish your brain and your body to feel its best. So my daughter, even today at lunch, she looked at me and she was eating a bowl of pasta and she was like, I'm going to go have some turkey too. And I was like, okay, good. That's a really good choice. And, it's just that like, you just want to make sure they're making those right choices. So when they're older and they don't listen to me anymore, they'll continue to hopefully make those right choices.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It'll be like ingrained in them. Yeah. It'll make a difference. If people want to try your products after all of this and reach out to you and connect with you, where can they go?
Bodybio.com. And for all of our Canadian listeners, we do ship to Canada. We actually have our NPN numbers for most of our products. We've just been having a hard time keeping them in stock. And so you can find those on Amazon Canada, which is really great. We're working on stocking that up a lot more. And on social media, everything's just at BodyBio.
Amazing. Yeah, the Amazon makes it really easy for everyone. So that's great. I will link that in the show notes and put it on my website so people can easily find you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your health journey with us and all about like leaky cell. I learned so much and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm most active. My handle is @biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.